Hit record. There we go. Okay. Let me also share my screen. And everybody disappeared, which I hate.
I can see your slide, Matt.
Oh, okay, perfect. Thank you. All right.
Or maybe.
So welcome to CI Mastermind Live. And as always, I'd like to do just a little bit of an intro on what we do here. This session is being recorded and transcribed, and we do occasionally use some of the things that we hear and see in these sessions in material that we post on LinkedIn, so just please keep that in mind. I like to see faces. The people interacting with you like to see faces. It helps a lot if you could turn your camera on. Somebody sent me a note and said that they were in the car driving, and no worries, I understand that. Please focus on driving, and I appreciate that that we're part of your driving experience today. I'll do an introduction, what you're hearing right now. Patrick will introduce himself. I know some of you know Patrick from past lives, but many of you don't, and then we'll get into our topic to your questions. You're part here of a monthly discussion that we have as CI professionals. I know many of you are in different industries and so on, but I think we all run into some of the same challenges as CI professionals, and that's the idea here, is to have a forum where we can kind of share those challenges, work them out together. So 5 to 20 people is what we're trying to keep this to. I know when we started last year, it was typically 5. Now I think we're closer to 15. So, but we'll try and keep it around 20 or less. We're always looking for topics that are useful for learning, but we keep the presentation piece very short so that you can ask questions and we have dialogue. I think dialogue, frankly, from my consulting experience, dialogue is where the real learning occurs. So we want to focus on that real time. And give different people a chance. So the reason why we send out the registration form with a question on it is to get some thoughts from you, get the dialogue going. So as we're having that dialogue, please respect your peers. Everyone has, so it's never been a problem. Don't share any information that shouldn't be made public, and help each other. So I encourage folks to jump in, and many of you do, and add your thoughts. I don't have all the answers. Patrick doesn't have all the answers, but we probably darn well close to having all the answers, given the number of people experienced on this call. So just a promotion for next month. It will be, we'll have our session on Halloween. We're going to have Mike Shannon join us. Mike has quite a bit of experience in 3PLs. He's going to focus on demand forecasting and talking about, I think that's a good topic, frankly, for as we get to the end of the year, think about next year and how changes in demand impact our companies. And so he's going to talk a little bit about that. Mike has some skepticism around just in time as a concept. He doesn't buy into the let's say, the dogma around just in time. So he's going to talk a little bit about that too. So I would encourage you to attend. And as always, I'll send a link for registration after our call today. All right. That is pretty much all the stalling that I can do, Patrick. So you are up, my friend. I'm going to go grab your slides. Hopefully they came through. And while I'm doing that, why don't you give an introduction on yourself?
Sounds good. Thanks, Matt. Hey, everybody. Thanks for having me today. My name is Patrick Mitsuuchi-Stork. Matt and I go back, I don't know, about 12, 13 years. It's also around time when I met Joost. We were working together at Navtech at the time, or Nokia Location Commerce. Just a little bit about my background. I've been in continuous improvement pretty much my entire career, with a couple of very brief exceptions. Going on about 24 years now. I first learned Lean or CI from or at an automotive company in Germany where I grew up. I did an internship during my industrial engineering program, and the company was working with Shingijutsu. Some of you may be familiar with Shingijutsu. They're Japanese consultants, many of whom have directly learned from Taiichi Ohno how to go deploy TPS, and we're also more or less instructed to take it out into the world and introduce it into different companies, regions, industries, and so forth. So I was fortunate enough to learn my first lessons in Kaizen and Lean from them. And then essentially all throughout my career, we're able to deepen that knowledge and experience, relocated to the US in the mid-2000s, had various roles in different industries, and ultimately, again, ran into Matt, or actually he became my boss at NAVTEC at the time. Well, I think applied more.
He quit shortly after, honestly, so I don't know what's going on.
We applied, I think, a little bit more of a Lean Six Sigma approach, tried to merge, I think, different concepts into what made it work for them. And then in 2012, I relocated to the Pacific Northwest, started working for Boeing. They also have worked over almost 3 decades closely with Shingijutsu as well. So a lot more heavy focus on classic Lean and TPS type deployments. And so I'm currently there at a role as a senior leader for Lean manufacturing. I'm supporting all of commercial airplanes. As you know, we've been going through some challenges recently, and that also speaks a little bit to our Lean journey. We've really struggled in the last few years regaining the momentum that we once had. So a lot of our work is really focused on operational stability. And that's kind of also the topic I wanted to touch on today, right? Because through the challenges that started for us in like 2017, 2018, through the 2 unfortunate crashes of our 737 MAXs, and then followed immediately by the impact from the pandemic, we really struggled with operational stability, and it was pretty chaotic working through all these challenges. So I want to talk a little bit about the tools we've been utilizing to work through this. It's here in the opening slide. I think that was sent out as part of the registration as well. This is not uncommon, right? Across industries, and I'm sure across many of your businesses as well, there are daily challenges that introduce a certain level of chaos in operations. And I think the Lean Toolbox offers a bunch of really good tools that can help us just with basic stability. We're not even talking yet about really, I would say, continuous improvement or transformation. This is all just about regaining some control of daily operations. So I'm going to touch on a few of those tools that we commonly use. Looking forward to also hearing from you both the challenges you're dealing with, maybe also the approaches you're taking, so I can learn also maybe from what you're doing. So I'm really looking forward to the exchange here.
So Patrick, can you see the slides?
I sure can, yes.
All right, go ahead.
All right. So again, these were just some numbers I've found in a little bit of research and preparation for this, right? So managers on one hand are dealing with their daily chaos, right? A lot of troubleshooting involved in the day-to-day business. A lot has to do also with interpersonal conflicts, or then just, again, addressing any unexpected problems that typically can arise in an operations environment. And then on the flip side, of course, their employees then as well lose quite a bit of time trying to gain understanding of just tasks they need to complete, dealing with miscommunications. I think that's both between leadership and themselves, as well as then cross-functionally, across the business, people that need to work with to complete those tasks, and then handling all these disruptions that come their way as well. And then overall, apparently, according to some studies, can lead up to 40% reduction in productivity. And that's quite a bit, right? That's quite a bit of money that's laying there on the table, ready for us to go take and turn into some value-added work and hopefully increase in productivity. So again, how can we address some of those types of challenges? And if we go to the next slide, again, these are just some of the tools we've been using. I'm just going to walk through these. Again, looking for your feedback on those as well. I think for us, it's really important that we direct all the attention to the Gemba, to the workplace. That's where you see the Genji Gembutsu, which really to us means when you're trying to understand the problem better and try to solve it, go down to the workplace, talk to the people that are actually doing the work, and let them tell you what they're struggling with, and also maybe what ideas they have to solve problems. So that's a principle that we're trying to redeploy really across all our leadership teams. And that's a big challenge. I think some of you have mentioned that as part of the registration. There are a lot of meetings on the calendar. And oftentimes, or most of the times, those meetings happen in conference rooms and it keeping people away from the floor. So that ideal of going down to the floor is the workplace is a really challenging one and a very real one. And so one way we're trying to address that is through leader-centered work. So trying to structure the work of a manager, of a leader, in a way that frees up time and allows them to spend time with their team, with their peers on the floor. And I talk a lot about the floor, which in our case is the production floor, but that really applies in any kind of environment, just wherever the work happens. So leader-centered work captures standard work for leaders. I say here across all levels. I think there's some limitations to that. The closer the role is to the actual work, so the lower level management chain, if you will, the more specific it needs to be. We are fairly hierarchical in our company. At the lowest level, we have team leaders that are hourly and work directly with the workforce. Their leader-centered work should be specified to somewhere between 90 and 100%. So their role is very clearly defined and is very prescriptive. Now, if you go a little bit further away from the value-added work there, so first-line managers is our next level, about 75% of their time is specified through leader-centered work. And so the higher you get in the hierarchy, the more space there is for non-standard work, because you're accomplishing more and more strategic work. Now, the important part about leader-centered work is really it has to come with a process. It's not just a checklist of things that leaders are expected to complete on a daily, weekly, or monthly basis. It also has to come with an accountability and coaching process. Accountability, of course, on one hand, is making sure that their leadership ensures those tasks are completed at the given time, but also that there's a coaching opportunity to understand why certain things don't get completed, right? That is a really important piece for introducing kind of a continuous improvement and learning mindset and problem-solving mindset, to give that space and time to have a discussion around why certain things do not come home, why they're not completed as expected, and understand how you can help remove those roadblocks. So again, leader-centered work is important really, and kind of pulling it all together, all the expectations that have to happen to make operations work. And again, it helps drive that focus to the floor, and also helps remove some of the burden for meetings. Another common tool many of you may have heard of is 5S. That is really about workplace organization. Unfortunately, I've seen too many times throughout my career, 5S is sometimes demoted down to just cleaning up, but it is really so much more. It is supposed to set a standard for, again, how we organize our workplace, how we set up all the required items that are needed around what we call the point of use, right, the point of consumption. So there's very little non-value added time by the individual retrieving things that they need. So everything is really close to where the work takes place. But it also makes it very clear when things are abnormal, meaning if you put everything where it needs to be, you can very quickly determine if you have everything to complete the job. And if not, it becomes very quickly visible through visual controls that are deployed with 5S. So that's something where we have really a long history at Boeing that has been deployed for well over 20 years, has seen varying levels of maturity. I just spoke earlier about the challenges we've recently been working through. So there's really a redeployment, if you will, going on at this point, where we're trying to remature our 5S system. Please, at any time, feel free to jump in and ask questions. Standardized work is, again, more about how we standardize the value-added work that's happening through our team members and operators. It is typically developed on our end by the people doing the work because they know best how to perform the work. I think in a extremely mature environment, this task can ultimately be covered by more of an engineering function. But if you're just getting started with this, highly recommended you pull in the people that do the work. Standardized work is very foundational for continuous improvement. It usually captures the sequence in which the work needs to be performed, how much time is available, and also the motion associated with that work. It needs to align to takt time. So if everything is captured in standardized work, you can easily determine if you're able to meet takt times or customer demand. And it also should capture how much inventory or material is needed to complete the work. So that also helps from a work in process perspective to help control the inventory within your value stream. And then ultimately, I mentioned that, right? It's the basis for continuous improvement and problem solving. There's this commonly known phrase, without a standard, there can be no improvement. And so we see that sometimes that we're trying to improve processes that are also not very well standardized. And it's really hard to grasp what the current expectations really are. So standardized work helps bring some of that stability into a process, right? So removing that aspect of the chaos. Spoke earlier about meetings, flurry of meetings. Many maybe happen ad hoc to solve issues that arise throughout the day, to troubleshoot. One thing we've been deploying and utilizing are tier meetings. Some call it also a daily management system. They're intended to be a series of short and focused meetings, typically with cross-functional participation. We try to limit them to about 15 minutes, and they start out at the lowest level in the organization. So the team members doing the value-added work, they meet with their team leader. That's what we call a tier 1 meeting. Then it goes up to the team leader in the first line. Manager go to a tier 2 meeting where you have typically cross-functional participation. And that's really, it's used to, on one hand, communicate how work is progressing, but predominantly it's there to communicate issues that are arising, right? That's the venue where problems can be raised, and this cross-functional support team is there to help resolve those. And so we typically go all the way up to about a tier 4 level, where we have directors and VPs also check in on one is the plan for the day, but also understand what issues are there that they need to help address and help remove roadblocks. But it's a very effective way to communicate critical information up and down the chain, but also ensure we don't have to schedule a bunch of ad hoc meetings to deep dive issues, right? And these meetings typically happen on the floor. Again, this focus on the Gemba is really critical, because if you want to go see a problem in that moment during the meeting for yourself, you just grab the right people and just go right there and understand what may be causing the issue. And lastly, an abnormality response systems. It's somewhat tied a little bit to the 5S, to the visual management as well. It's really the collection of visuals and resources and processes, like I say here, to enable a quick response. At Toyota, you may be familiar with that. They use the end-on system that signals line stoppages or problems that may cause a line stoppage. This is a very similar concept here. We provide a cross-functional team line sight at every station where we assemble our products. And if they run into an issue, they signal that to this cross-functional team, and that cross-functional team is then primarily there to contain the problem. It's not so much there to drive to root cause and drive prevention of problems. It's just there to essentially react to issues that come up and quickly contain them so the work can continue. So it's a very similar concept that Toyota uses. Go ahead.
Patrick, that's a staffed position at Boeing? Like
For us, it is. Yep, we have again, it's a cross-functional team. Typically, you see in there people from our materials management side, different engineering groups, manufacturing representatives. That's kind of the quality is in there as well. Kind of the common roles, just due to the nature of the types of issues that could come up. And again, their focus is only on containment, so that the work can continue. And we don't really use continuous flow at this point yet. We're calling it pulse line. But at certain rates, the airplanes move to the next assembly position, and we want to make sure that it actually can move. So those problems have to be resolved within that time window.
Oh, that's very cool. Most of the businesses I work with, they just don't have the size or scale for that kind of staffing. And what typically happens is whoever is responsible for continuous improvement is that quick response person. And usually broader continuous improvement activities suffer because of that. So it's interesting. I just trying to think about how that might work at a smaller level.
Well, maybe as an example. So as you know, I had the chance to visit several Japanese companies over the last 12 months. And at one of them, they're a fairly small electronics manufacturer, electronic component manufacturer. Their system, they actually use more a audible signal. So if somebody runs into a problem in their assembly, they can signal that, and then there's an announcement through the speaker system at what position they have what kind of issue, and then there's a cross-functional team. It's typically their team leaders or supervisors that immediately stop anything they're doing and run to that spot to make sure they can resolve that issue right in and there. So it's not a dedicated team. It's really the more the leadership and subject matter experts. They're expected to go run and fix it, because there's nothing more important than keep the production going.
Interesting. Okay, I could ask more questions there, but I want to let's jump into some questions from the members here, and I'm going to take Jeff Poliwada. Jeff,
Palawota.
Say it again, please.
Palawota.
Okay, and I should know that one by now, but sorry. So Jeff Palawota, and the question that we asked you all was, what types of challenges represent the chaos you observed in the workplace? And Jeff, you wrote, we are currently conducting clinical trials for a biopharma product. As such, we have strict processes and protocols for manufacturing, QC, QA, etc., but need better defined and established business processes as we move toward commercialization. So you just heard kind of Patrick's brain dump. How do you, can you give us a little more on your question there? I guess, how are you thinking about what he's saying helps reduce chaos in the terms of your work environment? What question might you have for him?
Well, first of all, I had a question. Can you show the previous slide?
Yes, I'll hold that back up. Give me a second.
And while he's doing that, Patrick, when you mentioned those short focus startup meetings, how often do those happen? Are those like daily team huddles, weekly?
They're typically every shift. So we're a 3-shift operation in most areas, and the beginning of every shift starts out with this tier 1 meeting. I would say the higher level ones, tier 4. So when you're talking more VP level, in our case, they happen only once a day. But the team level and then the next level up, where you get this cross-functional support team, that's every shift.
Okay, great, thanks.
Are you guys seeing that? I was having a little trouble pulling it up.
Yeah, and I guess where I see what Patrick's covered helping us, and what we're starting to do is the standardized work. As I mentioned, we have well-documented manufacturing processes because, we're an FDA regulated industry. So there's not a lot of room for change. But in terms of the business processes, we don't always have, as a research organization, we don't have standardized work processes in some cases where we should. And that's where we're working to do so. Just for as one example, one of the things I'm working on is our contracts process. In the past, it's been less formal. Different people would sign contracts, and there were subject matter experts that should have been involved but weren't. And we found out later, well, we should have had a service level agreement for this particular contract, and we didn't. So what we've done is we've defined the different types of contracts we could sign for products and services and categorize them. If it's type A, this subject matter expert should be involved. If it's type B, this subject matter expert should be involved, and so on and so forth. So we're putting more formal, well-defined, well-documented processes in place to establish standardized work for business processes. So do you have anything to add to that, Travis?
Oh, no, I think you cover it pretty well.
And Jeff, are these processes mainly office-based or both office-based and more and operational? I don't know if you can call it per se manufacturing, but is it a mix of things?
No, the operational side is pretty well defined because it's covered by it's defined in our quality system. These are more business processes, office processes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and in those cases, standardized work in that sense still applies, or standard work. It can take a little bit, I think, a different nature or manner there. I would probably still start out, if that's not clear yet, with some form of process mapping to make sure the sequence is right and the handoffs are clear. And then within each of those steps, now you can ask those experts to define what they're actually doing, and that establish the standard work. I don't know how critical it is there to look specifically at time. In the build process in manufacturing, timing is very critical, right? In terms of meeting that customer demand, that tact. That may not be as critical in that office process, so it may look a little different. But first, it's really critical to understand proper sequence and then dive into that lower level detail.
Yeah, and we do use, when I say document our processes, it's through process mapping.
Perfect. Yeah, that's a great start. Absolutely.
And Jeff, for everybody here, when you look at the items, the techniques that Patrick has identified up there, part of this is, of course, capturing and documenting and visualizing. That's important, right? But those are very static things. There's also a dynamic component to really all of these, which is about people seeing and taking action. So it's not enough just to put it on paper. There has to be activities, management activities that include reinforcing what's on paper, checking to see if reality matches what's on paper, right? Making sure that leaders, that's the leader standard work part, have the recognition that part of their role is to check and coach, right? And so they should be able to talk about how they're doing those things. Otherwise, it's not worth any more than the paper that it's written on. And I just want to emphasize that because I see it all the time.
Yeah, so that the aspect of operationalizing it, that's where this really comes into play. It's relatively easy to put it all on paper, but how do you then actually use it on a day-to-day basis? So I spoke about that with leaders center work. It's not just a checklist. You have to have a process with it that drives the accountability and the coaching opportunity.
Well, and another thing we've employed or we're employing is 5S and visual management, organizing the work. As one example, we do have some commercial products, cells and media that we sell to researchers. When we evaluate new business opportunities, there's a lot of emails going back and forth, and you have to sort through emails to look for information. So Travis and I and another colleague put together a well-defined formal stage gate process where each step along the way, we evaluate whether or not it's worth further evaluation. And we've defined, time frames. If it's a simple like contract manufacturing project, well defined, it's within X days. If it's more complex, needs further evaluation, it's Y days. So we in fact, my colleague just presented that and it was very well received. And we're going to have a tracking system to make sure to track these business opportunities at every stage to make sure they're not getting stuck or lost in the shuffle.
Perfect. So I'm going to keep us moving. Thank you, Jeff, for the question. Thank you, Patrick, for the answers. And I also want to, I forgot to mention earlier, I encourage conversations in the chat. Not everyone's going to get a chance to talk and ask questions here as much as possible. We want to do that, but the chat is another way that you can kind of get conversation going. I see a few of you using that. I would encourage you to continue. Okay, the next response I wanted to go into was from Ryan DeRosa. And Ryan, you said you're dealing with foreseeable problems that are collectively missed. I like that one. Thus, turning the problems into emergencies. We make it through the chaos only to eventually find ourselves back in the same situations later. Can you expound on that a little bit and see what Patrick might give you for advice?
Yeah, absolutely. Of course, now the examples escape me, right? I think, but just to what I was saying, we seem to have repetitive issues that we fall into on different lengths of time scale. Whether, okay, I'm in the restaurant industry, we have Perones, right, that need to be dried a specific way so mold doesn't accumulate on them, right? We put a change in place. It seems to be going well, and then a month and a half later, I'm spending, $1,000 on new Perones because these things are all ruined, right? Where it's difficult to run into those problems, see that they need to change. Change is trying to be enacted, doesn't stick, and back up in the same place.
Okay. I can at least see somewhat of a connection to some of the elements we have on here. There's the piece of abnormality response, right? That's always very reactive. And again, it's just about containing. And the nature of that is, unless you collect some of that data and try to see some patterns of repetitive things, right, that could lead them to some form of process improvement, you will stay in this reactive mode and things will keep happening. And we have that in some areas of our facilities as well. And in some cases, it's also because the leaders in those areas have so much on their plate, so much troubleshooting to do. It's hard for them to just stop and really go to root cause and try to prevent things from happening again. So that's what, when we introduce leaders done the work there, we can't typically expect them to spend every day a significant amount of time on problem solving and going really to root cause and drive towards prevention. But what I typically recommend there is that we at least understand those big ones and maybe just focus on one at a given time. Try to resolve just one problem so that problem doesn't come back again. And so if you keep doing this, then over time, there should be less and less problems happening and your processes become more and more stable. But that's the process that doesn't happen overnight. So we're trying to build that into their leader standard work and say, spend at least like an hour a week, try to carve that out and really dive deep on one of those issues, and then use things like standardized work or other tools to lock in an improved process and then move on to the next problem. Because otherwise you just get overwhelmed with all the problems coming your way.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. Is there a way that then do you have a process to evaluate those problems and their level of importance?
So yeah, that is typically, it is driven through the data collection. In our case, again, we have this entire cross-functional team that is line side and does this containment, and that collects data in our systems, and we use that then to determine severity and frequency, right? And that typically helps prioritize those issues. But we also know that our people know, right? Our team leaders and supervisors that are close to the work, they know which issues keep happening. So it's just a matter of helping them prioritize some time in their week, carve out some time and maybe help them, coach them through it, or even us doing some of that work for them and with them to help them resolve one issue at a time.
I do think both things are absolutely important. What I see missed more often is the budgeting for the time. I see, companies utilizing leader standard work, but not really, not making the time to do certain things on there, or there's certain things that are missed every week, and there's no conversation on what we're doing about it. So there's always going to be a priority, in my opinion, right? I've talked to other folks, but I think, Patrick, you agree, there's always going to be a prioritization. Time is a limited resource. But aside from the prioritization, like fixing that one big problem, like let's just start there, And oftentimes, Ryan, I think this is what I'm hearing from your situation. We're just not budgeting the time. It's not considered as part of the production work, and time for RCA is part of the production work. At least for the group leaders and supervisors, if not for some of the operators as well.
And then, again, just because of the size of our operation, we do have this cross-functional team that is there to help. I recognize, right, in smaller businesses, that's not readily available and also not budgeted for. So I think it's then individually dependent, but also I would say on the local leadership to say, hey, this is important to us, right? I think we all recognize that we keep having the same issues over and over again, and we could really save a lot of time if we start solving them to root cause. I think that realization has to happen first. Otherwise, it's difficult to introduce that in that environment.
Can I'm interested in a quick show of hands. How many of your companies have clearly designated time for at least RCA, if not like real continuous improvement? Who's got that like kind of mapped into their week, or not just you, but your team and your production folks, it's mapped into their week? Raise your hand if that's true. It's mapped into your week.
I think that's zero, Matt.
Well, in my health system, there's a whole separate, team that deals with RCAs and whatnot for these issues that pop up. So it's not necessarily within like project management or process improvement, but we get integrated as needed if there's process issues.
So you've budgeted it from a role perspective, is what I'm hearing. Is that right, Jason?
Oh yeah, it's all tied in with patient safety and quality, and in healthcare, that's it.
The only challenge I'd throw to you there is when you designate a group to own it, it takes some ownership off of the everybody, right, kind of thing. And I would like everybody to have some component of responsibility for RCA. But I like kind of a hybrid approach where you have a couple people that live and breathe RCA, but then at a team level, right, they're doing a little bit of their own as well, if that makes sense.
Maybe let me expand a little bit on this. So in the context of tier meetings, I mentioned the lowest level is working level. It's the team with the team lead typically. They have what we call a tier board that has their key performance measures on it that typically fall into the typical safety, quality, delivery. We also put people on there from a morale perspective. But they track their performance on those boards. They spend 1 hour a week looking at that and drive from that improvement ideas. And that too helps resolve some of those recurring issues, right? But so there was this commitment made that everybody gets 1 hour a week to work on those issues. And we really lost a lot of that through the instability I mentioned earlier over the last years. And just this year, they recommitted to this and saying we have to spend that time. And that comes from the very top. So I think that kind of commitment is important, like you say, Matt, to recognize you have to carve out the time to look more forward, right? More preventive, more proactive, and you use that data from the past experience to drive your focus and priority.
Let's thank you, Patrick. Thank you, Ryan. Let's just do one more short one before we close out the call. And I'm going to go to, I lost my thought, folks. Hold on. I'm going to go to Yoast. And Yoast, yours was really simple. It's just how can we leverage lean manufacturing to help business scale? I'd like to, if I can, Yoast, I'd like to rephrase it and say, how do we take some of the methods that Patrick you're sharing, and how do they help with the challenges that cause businesses not to scale? And Yoast, please, can you chime in there? Do you agree kind of with the way I'm reframing your question?
My context is, I live in Italy, and in the industrial district where I'm helping companies, it's very often small and medium companies. Yeah, and they all somehow see the modern. We have been talking a lot here in Italy about world class manufacturing through the Fiat case and so, and everybody somehow knows about it, but then getting it into your daily routine, that's a different story. Yeah, so that's why it's interesting to hear if other people have experience in that field.
And I would say, it really depends on the stage and the maturity of a business, right? I mean, the toolbox is huge of lean, and it depends on the unique situation. But really, I think the general teaching I got over the years, and that we're really trying to reinforce with our team, is start with understanding sequence. And we use a tool called Fishbone. It's not an Ishikawa diagram. It's a way to document the right sequence for a manufacturing process, and also all the inputs coming into it.
Oh, this is a different Fishbone.
Mm-hmm. That's what we often use, just to make sure we understand sequence, and that leads then to something like either value stream mapping or material information flow mapping, to understand how things connect, how information flows and material moves. That is really helps us get a basic understanding of what should be and what is, and from there now you can go into doing point improvements to help correct some of the issues you're finding through the analysis. That's something we're really trying to introduce again. To me, that goes beyond what I showed today, right? This was more about how can I stabilize just daily operational chaos. This looks as a lot more about how do I prepare, like you're saying, for scaling up. So I have to stabilize my processes, right? Standardized work sure fits in there, but the other tools I mentioned are more, your management system that you also have to build up. But it sounds like there's a technical piece here of sequence, flow of material and information, standardizing work, and you need to establish some level of that so you can also then speed up and scale up.
Yeah, I think there is an element too in my experience, is that you see that these organizations, they come from a level of maturity that's way lower than you may be used to in Boeing, right? Mm-hmm. And then there is an element of psychology to it as well. Yeah? How do you get a person to actually embrace the fact that you have a standard process and that you now play by the rules, and that you measure things, and so I think
it's very important. That's what I've been trying to get into my teams as well, is we're not doing lean because we want to check that box off. We introduced a lean tool, a lean principle. It has to start with the customer and the business needs. You have to focus there, right? Voice of the customer. What is the demand? What's the tact? And how do we achieve that tact? And there are a number of different tools that can help you get there, but you have to start there. And I would argue that people within a business can more link to that than to a specific tool you're trying to introduce. So if you start there, it's easier to have that conversation.
It also speaks easier about money at that point, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
If you can connect it to the dollars and the experience that people are having, then you don't need any of the fancy words. You just help them go, like, follow this technique. It gets better. I'm going to leave it there, everybody, and just say thank you to Patrick And thank you to everyone's involvement in the discussion and the chat group as well. I thought that went really good. We will be back next month, and I hope you'll join us. Okay, have a great month.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Patrick.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.